Radiology Artificial Intelligence podcast. My name is Paul Yee, and I'm the host of the podcast and a radiologist at the University of Maryland. It's been a while since our last episode, and some of you might have been wondering what's going on. Well, first, I want to assure you that the podcast is alive and well. We have, however, been in a bit of transition, but some comings and goings on our social media team, which we'll get to in a little bit. For today's episode, I'll be joined by two guest hosts / interviewees in a hybrid kind of episode. Dr. Chuck Kahn, the editor-in-chief of the journal, and Dr. Hisham El-Halawani, one of the associate editors of the journal, will be joining me, and we'll be reflecting on the journal's activities the past few years, as well as talking about some of the changes and transitions going on with the social media team. And as always, we'll be looking forward to the future of what AI has in store for the field of radiology. So with that, welcome to another episode of the Radiology AI podcast. Chuck and Hisham, thanks so much for joining us on the Radiology AI podcast. And thank you to our listeners for joining us here after a hiatus for a couple of months. Today's episode will be a little bit different. Just to lay out some ground rules, there's three of us here. We have Dr. Chuck Kahn, who's our editor-in-chief. We have Dr. Hisham El-Halawani, who is one of the incoming associate editors, and myself. And this will be a little bit of a hybrid where we'll be both co-moderating and interviewing each other. And similar to our last episode with the fireside chat, this is going to be a little bit more of a relaxed conversation as much as it is an interview amongst friends. So with that, let me first take on the introducer role for Chuck. So Dr. Charles Kahn is professor and vice chair of radiology at the University of Pennsylvania Perelman School of Medicine. After earning his Bachelor of Arts in Math and a Master's in Computer Science at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, as well as his MD at the University of Illinois, he completed a radiology residency at the University of Chicago, where he served as chief resident. He then served on the faculty at the University of Chicago and the Medical College of Wisconsin before moving to his current position at the University of Pennsylvania. In addition to his expertise and interest in AI and imaging informatics, Chuck is a board-certified practicing radiologist with expertise in body CT and ultrasound. And amongst many accolades, he's received the gold medal of the American Roentgen-Ray Society and has been elected a fellow of the ACR, the American College of Medical Informatics, as well as the Society for Imaging Informatics and Medicine. So Chuck, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for the very kind introduction. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Hisham. Dr. El-Halawani is a radiation oncology clinical fellow at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and after completing his undergraduate and medical studies at Ain Shams University in Cairo, Egypt, Dr. El-Halawani completed research and clinical fellowships at MD Anderson and Cleveland Clinic Cancer Centers before starting his current position at Brigham and Women's Hospital. He has significant experience in cancer imaging biomarkers and radiomics, and a very large enthusiasm for artificial intelligence applications in cancer research. And as you mentioned earlier, both Hisham and yourself, Paul, are joining the editorial board for the Radiology AI journal to assist with our social media activities. And it's a pleasure to welcome Hisham to this podcast.
Thank you, Paul and Chuck. The pleasure is always mine. And definitely last but not the least is Dr. Paul Yee. Let me introduce him. He is the Assistant Professor of Diagnostic Radiology and Nuclear Medicine at the University of Maryland, where he also directs the University of Maryland Medical Intelligence Imaging, UM2I. 2I is not one, center. He earned his BA and MD at Boston University, followed by radiology residency and musculoskeletal imaging fellowship at Johns Hopkins, and Imaging Informatics Fellowship at the University of Maryland. His research focuses on applications and limitations of deep learning in radiology, including the potential for algorithmic bias. Dr. Yee has served on the RSNA Machine Learning Steering Subcommittee and the inaugural Trainee Editorial Board of Radiology Artificial Intelligence, and he is the journal's podcast host and the newly nominated associate editor for the Radiology AR for social media.
Hisham, thanks so much for the kind introduction. So as I mentioned, this is a little bit of a different kind of format. And a lot of this for our listeners is that the social media team, both with podcasts, with tweet chats, and all of everything in between, it's going through a little bit of a transition. So we wanted to take a little bit of time now that the journal has been around for a few years. The podcast is, I think, a little bit over a year old now, and just take some time to talk about where we've been, where we currently are, and where we hope to go. So with that, I was thinking that we could start with maybe taking some reflections on the journal, maybe from Chuck's point of view. So Hisham, do you want to take it over as the moderator here?
My pleasure. And actually, Chuck, let me start by saying it feels surreal when you think it has been over 3 years since the first Radiology AI issue, right? So, can you believe it?
Um, I find it challenging. I will say it's been an absolute joy to be involved in the journal, and it's been we've done a little bit of work along the way, but it's been really fun to go through it and to get us to where we are today.
Absolutely. And watching you doing it is super fun as well. So, actually, now that the journal is a toddler, kinda, how have you seen the journal grow and develop over the past 3 years?
Well, the thing that's challenging whenever you're handed a a brand new journal is to create an identity and a community for it. And I think that's been one of the things that we've really strived to achieve. The tremendously good news for this journal, I have to say, is that even though uh, when you start out, you don't necessarily have any content, you don't have an impact factor, you don't have a PubMed listing. Um, but we had the support of RSNA, which gave us essentially 54,000 potential subscribers to the journal. Um, with that, though, I have to say we've been, I think, I'm just tremendously pleased with the quality of articles that we've been able to attract. Um, we've we're the you know we're positioning ourselves well. We've, I think, created a trusted brand, if you will, and we have a spectacular community of writers and reviewers and it's and readers, and it's been very enjoyable to see it grow.
So true, I can attest to this. And I believe Radiology AI has accomplished a lot under your leadership. So let me ask you, what things are you most proud of?
Well, I will tell you that first off, I'm really proud of our editorial board. We have a superb team of people who help guide the journal and have assured a solid scientific underpinning for the things that we've published, and in particular our four deputy editors who that's Will Shu, Despina Kantos, Jayashri Kalpathy Kramer, and Ronnie Sebro are just absolutely fantastic. They bring diverse perspectives and backgrounds, and but a really thorough understanding of the techniques and the science that goes along with deep learning and radiology. And it's been terrific working with them. I have to say too that one of the other things I'm immensely proud of is our trainee editorial board, and uh, both Paul and Hisham are now alumni of that program. But it's really been something that we were very excited to develop for the journal. And it's done a number of things for us. First off, it's brought us in contact with really a number of extraordinarily bright and talented and hardworking people coming up in the profession, which is very exciting. For any journal, it's always a challenge identifying people who can help review manuscripts. And if even if you find people who review manuscripts, getting folks who can do that well. And um, the thing that's been amazing to me is that the trainee group has consistently uh, delivered among the highest quality reviews that we get from any of the reviewers in our panel, and that's been really wonderful. Um, I guess among other things too, one of the efforts that we pioneered was called CLAIM, the checklist for AI in medical imaging, which set out in a guideline for authors and reviewers, very similar to tools like STARD for STARD that was developed for reporting diagnostic accuracy studies. There are a variety of these publishing guidelines. People may have heard of Prisma or Probast, Consort. Uh, they're intended as checklists in a way to help people assure that the information that they provide as part of their manuscript is complete and helpful, and that it allows sound, reproducible science to be conducted. The thing that is remarkable about it is that the guideline has been, not only have we adopted it, but it's been something that's been in use by various other societies, both in radiology and in other fields, and other journals have used it for their manuscripts. So that's been something that we're particularly proud of.
That's a very impressive list. But may I ask you if along the way, were there any things that you were not expecting, especially during the first year or two? And of those, what was the most surprising to you?
Um, to be honest, I don't know if I have a good answer for that. We've as we've made progress in this, I guess we were fortunate. I will say, I mean, maybe one thing that was surprising along the way, but a good surprise. We started developing our Twitter presence early on, before I believe it was even in November of 2018, before our first issue came out in January of 2019. Um, and from there, that's now grown to more than 11,000 followers on Twitter, and I guess that was something that was rather surprising. I mean, I'm happy, and but a happy surprise, and we're really delighted that people have found that to be useful, and in fact, I guess if anything beyond that, it's that it turns out that Twitter is really a very effective medium for conveying um, announcements and updates about scientific information. Obviously, um, the technical detail of our manuscripts is not something that one can capture in 280 characters in a tweet, but by providing links to the articles and making using the Twitter feed as a way to help make people aware of the content in the journal, it's helped people find the work that's being published in the journal and draw attention to it, uh, which is very encouraging.
Totally agree. And I think we have 11,000 followers who agree with you as well. So I guess, where do you hope to see the journal go into the next few years as we move out of the toddler stages and we're getting more into preschool stage?
So no more. I guess we won't be able to throw any more journal. The journal won't be able to throw any more tantrums, I guess. Although I'm not sure we have it. Um, I think one of the things that we're looking to do as we go forward is to develop um, some new special collections and thematic issues of the journal. We've just published our first focused on imaging AI in practice, talking about clinical applications. But I could very well see building some special collections, such as we did with the Magician's Corner articles early on, that were designed to help guide people through a hands-on learning experience of how do you start using deep learning tools. I think we have an opportunity to start potentially focusing on some thematic areas that we can bring in uh, particular articles and seek out really high quality submissions to the journal.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, Chuck.
Sure. And with that, I mean, you've heard my point of view. I'd like to shift gears a little bit to get the view that that you, Hesham, and Paul have had as former members of our trainee editorial board, and tell us about your experiences on the TEB. How did it work for you? What did you enjoy most? Maybe we'll start with Paul.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first, Chuck, thank you for the opportunity to be on the TEB. I remember back just a few years ago, I was still a resident and I applied for this, and never did I think I would actually get picked. So I think the biggest thing from that I've enjoyed is just finding a community of people who have similar interests, who really are all interested in AI in radiology. But the cool thing was we all came from different backgrounds. Some of us were diagnostic radiologists. Some of us were IR. Some of the people weren't even physicians, but they maybe were on the medical physics or the engineering side. And I think that to me has been one of the most enjoyable parts was really finding people who think differently, who see things from different perspectives and learning and growing from them. But we were all united with this common thread of AI for medical imaging. How can we be involved with the journal? How can we make meaningful contributions? And how can we all appreciate what we're doing together? And through that, I've made some really good friends who I hope will be friends for many years, if not my whole life. Matt Lee was one of the inaugural members along with me, and we just hung out at the SSR meeting where actually just as one of the fruits of the TED, I think both of us gave faculty talks, even though Matt is currently a fellow at MGH. I'm in my first year of faculty, but it was centered around one of the AI breakout sessions. And I think that for me, it's been a lot of fun just to kind of maybe meet friends, but also kind of grow up together, so to speak, in the in our careers and more specifically in the AI world. And that includes people like Hisham as well and Danya, and just being able to do fun things together. And so for me, I think it's really been the community, in addition to all of the opportunities to review papers, to write editorials, and be involved with things like the podcast.
Great. Well, thank you, Paul. And Hisham, your thoughts?
Well, I will echo everything Paul said, of course. And it was very impressive to me to see how Radiology AI spearheaded the trainee editorial board initiative. And kudos to you, Chuck, and to Dr. Judy Gishoya. So when I first applied, I was looking for mentorship in peer review, biostatistics, and research design, but little did I know. So in addition to all of these, of course, and everything that Paul has mentioned, I think TEB was one of the most engaging experiences I have ever had. It was impressive to see how trainee centered, motivating, and thinking out of the box TEB has been. And here's a shameless plug to an invitation to all medical students, residents, clinical fellows, graduate students, and research fellows in, like Paul mentioned, radiology, radiation oncology, and radiation physics and biomedical engineering to apply for joining the coming TEB. So whoever listens to us, please do not forget to submit your application by May 2nd. And I believe we can safely promise them an incredible experience that will revolutionize their perception of medical journalism the same way it did to me and Paul.
Totally, couldn't agree more.
Can you imagine the various the various initiatives that were spurred? I have to say that among the things that grew out from the TEB, there was really a lot of enthusiasm of using social media as a way to help reach out and um, uh, build community related around the journal. And it seems like a lot of the things that particularly the two of you have done in this area have really been related to that.
So I can go first and say that the honest answer is no. To be honest, Radiology AI trainee editorial board has surpassed all my expectations and everyone's expectations. It's once in a lifetime experience and opportunity, and to that I'm very grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Hisham that when I joined, I thought it was going to be pretty straightforward. We'll learn to review papers, we'll get feedback, and we'll be involved with kind of a very traditional maybe model of academic journalism. But one of the things with the TV that I realized is this is really maybe going along with the kind of innovative spirit of AI, that there was a lot of room for, well, innovation, exploring different types of things, different types of editorial activities. And for me, it's been eye-opening to see that journalism is not just the printed word or the printed word on, a academic journal, but it can be audio. It can have media on the internet through things like Twitter, things like maybe even TikTok. We have a YouTube channel now. And so for me, yeah, I mean, definitely not something I would have imagined. I certainly didn't have an idea for a podcast, but really glad that we had the opportunity to explore these things.
I will only say, from the perspective of an editor, that one of the aspects of a journal, and particularly for a new journal, is to be able to develop community around it. And it's not just about putting out a monthly, bi monthly printed edition, if you will. It really is about how we create a community of people who share ideas and interact around this space. And I think to that end, the imagination and the energies of the TEB members that we've had have contributed remarkably to the endeavor. You asked me how I've seen the journal change and grow and evolve. I'm curious as to how you've seen changes in it, or how you think of it as throughout the 2 year term that you both served on the trainee editorial board, and your perspectives on it.
Yeah, so I was going to say real quick, I think this goes along with the TEB kind of maybe the energy. As an alum, I kind of want to lump myself in one of the older guys now. Um, this past RSNA meeting, sitting in on the editorial board meeting and hearing the perspectives of the new TEB members, it was incredibly inspiring and in a lot of ways invigorating, because these were people who had a lot of really fresh ideas that I never would have considered, a lot of really great energy and motivation. And honestly, I left the meeting feeling really well, inspired, and I think encouraged to continue doing what we're doing, to think maybe a little bit differently. And I think, as we'll talk about a little bit later, I think the future is really bright for the future of the TEB, for some of the things that they can contribute, and something I certainly hope we get to continue to see the journal grow and evolve in, especially in that mentorship kind of uh, avenue.
Thank you, Paul. Hisham?
Totally agree. And I would add that the breadth and the depth of imaging AI topics that have been addressed in radiology AI is breathtaking. So, in addition to high quality methodological studies, radiology AI has always been at the center of game changing initiatives, like publishing consensus guidelines, the very famous claim checklist that Chuck referred to, societal initiatives like the RSNA Imaging AI in Practice, or the IAIP, in addition to major AI challenges and more. So I really believe, even as a trainee, shedding light on these topics is of essence if we are serious about taking AI from code to clinic.
So among the transitions that we've had recently, um, Danya Day, who has served as associate editor for social media, uh, has transitioned to consultant to the editor. Danya has been tremendously productive and helpful, and really has enabled us to get started with so many of the social media activities that we've had for the journal. But as with all things that happen to good people, they get even busier. So we're trying to help her out, and we're very fortunate that Paul and Hisham, that the two of you have joined us on the editorial board for that. But it would be interesting if maybe now that you have become part of our social media team, uh, maybe you can tell our listeners about what you see as some of the transitions and some of the path ahead for us. Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah, so as Chuck mentioned, after a distinguished term as associate editor of social media for the journal, Danya is stepping down, and we'll miss her dearly. But in the interim, Hisham and I will be the associate editors for social media for the journal, and we'll be continuing our roles as podcast hosts and tweet chat hosts, respectively. And we'll also be introducing some new initiatives in the coming months.
Well, very well said, Paul. So, and I think I would say like our new initiatives will center around more involvement of trainee editorial board members in the different social media activities and platforms for radiology AI. So, like Chuck mentioned, we want to continue training the next generation of leaders in radiology AI, not just in journal editorial activities, but in these other important forms of communication. So, this includes moving beyond text and audio into video. And I would like to shed some light on the Radiology AI Bits and Bytes YouTube channel as an example. So we are literally breaking down key papers and concepts to engaging videos with illustrations and narrations, all in less than 3 minutes. That's priceless, especially given our very fast-paced lifestyle as trainees and attendings alike. So big kudos to Radiology AI Trainee Editorial Board, Dr. Pedro Stasiaki, for spearheading this effort. Also coming up will be more in-person events, including the RSNA fireside chat that you, Paul, and Danya were like spearheading in the last 2021 RSNA annual meeting, and it was very well received. And of course, there is the Radiology AI podcast, but I will leave that to the topic experts.
So, Paul, maybe you can tell us the story about how the podcast came to be. It's one that might surprise some folks.
Yeah, definitely. So I admit, I have to walk back the years because I think with COVID, my sense of time has been a little bit warped. I think this was I want to say, what was it, 2019 RSNA annual meeting was when we had our first TEB meeting as part of the editorial board. And after that meeting, I had this idea that I'd been kicking around in my mind. For anyone that knows me, I'm kind of a podcast junkie. And one of my favorites is How I Built This by Guy Raz of NPR. And the premise of it is basically Guy Raz, who's a journalist, he interviews entrepreneurs, people who have started different kinds of movements, everything from the founders of Lyft and Dropbox to other things like Headspace. And so the idea that I had originally actually was, what if we did a podcast where we interviewed entrepreneurs and movers and shakers in the field of radiology AI and informatics? So I had in mind people like Dr. Elliot Siegel, who founded the first filmless radiology department in the world, or people like Dr. Khan Siddiqui, who had done a number of entrepreneurial efforts, including most recently Hyperfine, which is the company that does portable point of care MRI. And I just thought that would be super inspiring, super interesting. So what happened at RSNA, it was just something in my mind. I actually just saw Danya walking through McCormick Place on one of the last days of the meeting. We had just had our first TB meeting. I met her, and I just said, "Hey, this is funny running into you. I had this idea for a podcast." And I said, how about how I made this with like an MAID instead of MADE? And honestly, it was a terrible kind of pun at the time, but Danya really liked the idea of a podcast. And so we pitched this idea initially to Chuck, but then that morphed into, well, what if rather than something that was simply just interviewing people about maybe entrepreneurial efforts or building things, let's make it a podcast for the journal, which can include certainly these things. Um, and so really from there, it just kind of grew into an idea. That's when, I had some homework to do to flesh out more of a structure. And to be honest, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. And even now, I'm learning as the months go week by week. But it's really how the podcast came to be. And so for me, I think that, again, going back to what I've appreciated most about the TEB, it's just been a lot of fun being able to have room to explore, have room to grow in certain skills. And I'd like to say that over the months and even over the past year and more, we've really improved on our ability to generate good content through the podcast. And so, yeah, that's the story. It's really just an idea, random encounter, and an organic process.
Where do you hope to see the podcast go in the coming months?
Yeah, so it's a really good question because I think that a lot of times journal podcasts can go very straightforward. We can be summarizing articles, interviewing authors of those articles, maybe interviewing the editors themselves. But I think with Radiology AI, we have a little bit of a unique position where we have a topic that's constantly changing. And so it's not just about the research because those topics themselves are constantly evolving. So what I'd like to see in the coming months is, in addition to what we've been doing, interviewing authors of interesting articles in the journal, interviewing some of the editorial board members, I'd like to see it move towards maybe talking to some experts in some of the more progressive or evolving topics. So, for instance, the ethics in AI. How do we think about things like patient data rights? How do we think about things like patient privacy issues? Other things are thinking about education about AI. So, I think it's one of the interesting things about this field is that it's still new to most of us in radiology. It doesn't matter if you've been a radiologist for 20 plus years or if you're a trainee. AI is something that is pretty new. And so one thing that we would like to see, or that I would like to see, is seeing more educational content, maybe having episodes where we go over some kind of concept or idea in AI and break it down in a way that really helps demystify things. And then finally, I'd love to see getting more of the trained editorial board members involved. This podcast was a product of that. And so I think that we've got a lot of really great uh, young members involved who could really make some great contributions. So those are all some of the areas I like to see the podcast move into.
Thanks, Paul. That's really great. So, Hisham, let me turn to you here and maybe tell us the story about how the tweet chats came to be.
Well, I hope people know that we owe it to you, Chuck, and to Dania's vision of integrating social media into clinical journalism. Because I recall that was probably around mid 2020, and back then the journal's Twitter account at radiology underscore AI has been posting regular updates on the latest scientific articles, commentaries, special features, and blog posts. And back then it had a booming followers base of more than 3,500 followers. By the way, to give some perspective, now the numbers surpass 11,000 followers. Mind blowing. So I guess back then, what you and Danya decided to do is to take it to the next level by hosting a monthly live written chat on Twitter about some sort of a predetermined topic, AI topic. And the tweets related to the discussion have been amplified through the journal's Twitter account by adding the hashtag RadAIChat. And I was both lucky and honored to serve as a panelist on the inaugural tweet chat about applications of AI in COVID 19 detection. A pretty timely topic back then, if you remember. And then moving forward, I became part of that amazing team that organizes the tweet chats and provides bite sized yet very deep information on AI and biomedical imaging.
I have to say, it's an interesting format for to have a conversation, but I think from things that others have told me that it really provides a way that not only people can sort of come to a virtual meetup at a given point in time, but it also makes it very easy for people to chime in, to contribute ideas, to join the conversation, which um, you know brings. I think for anyone, it's always kind of an exciting moment to have people who are expert in a particular area. Talking whether that's finance of how AI will be paid for and reimbursement mechanisms or some of the technical aspects of AI or ethical considerations. And anyone who happens to be on at that time during the tweet chat can engage with those people and become part of the conversation.
Absolutely. And that's the kind of feedback that we have been receiving. And the beautiful part is that, irrespective of your background or your level of expertise, you will always find something amusing, something educational on every monthly tweet chat.
So where do you hope to see the tweet chats go in the coming months?
Well, it has been quite a journey, right? So, in less than 2 years of tweet chats, we had 20 plus tweet chats, and topics ranged from AI interpretability to reimbursement, like you mentioned, mitigating bias in AI, all the way to soliciting feedback on how to make AI more patient and more family centered. It has been kind of a Cinderella story. So I promise our listeners that we will continue to engage leading experts, practicing radiologists, data scientists, and trainees in this open forum around other important topics in AI. So the ones I have like off the top of my head are going to be like how to streamline AI and practical tips on taking AI from code to bedside. AI equity is a very important topic that's near and dear to our hearts, and more. And I would honestly love to seize the opportunity to ask our audience who are listening to us to email us at podcasts@rsna.org about ideas and topics they want to see discussed at Radiology AI Tweet Chats. And please tune in first Wednesday every month for more tweet chats to come.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we're moving into the last few minutes of our time together. So I want to continue a Radiology AI podcast tradition and ask each of you, what are you most excited about for the next decade in radiology AI or informatics or for the journal, frankly? Why don't we start with Chuck?
Thank you, Paul. I have to say, in terms of the uh, the applications of AI in radiology, I'm actually very excited to see the uh, the increasing clinical use of these tools. It's not just something being envisioned in the laboratory. It's something that we actually are beginning to uh, bring into the clinical setting and use in practice. And to me, the hope in all of that is that we can use these tools to truly improve the care of our patients in so many ways. Both within the United States and in many countries abroad, there simply are not adequate services to provide to people. And if there are ways that we can use AI tools to bulk read mammograms, for example, to aid in mammographic screening, um, to aid in the detection of tuberculosis in countries that, quite frankly, may have one radiologist per million population. These are real opportunities that we can use this technology uh, to to improve lives and to extend the reach of what we do as radiologists. We know for a fact that we really won't have enough radiologists to meet the growing needs of our patients in the coming decades, and that's going to be a real challenge. And I think AI is coming along at exactly the right time to help us by automating much of that. On a kind of tactical level, I'm very gratified with our ability to connect with uh, people from radiology with the AI related scientific disciplines. And I'm really very happy that that the journal has been part of that. But organizations like AAPM, the American Association of Physicists in Medicine, the people who do medical physics, organizations like MICI that do medical image computing, that bring together people with biomedical engineering and computer science and statistics and epidemiology backgrounds. I think all of those, it makes a much richer conversation, and it allows us to build on the skills that we all bring, where we as diagnostic interventional radiologists, as radiation oncologists, can guide the medical application of these tools, and our colleagues from the AI related scientific fields can help us by developing new techniques and building those, and working together, I think, is going to be the way we're really going to drive the field forward. So I think that's something that to me is particularly exciting going forward.
Thanks for sharing those thoughts, Chuck. And how about you, Hisham?
Yeah, I totally agree with Chuck. And honestly, I would really like to focus on the potential of AI to eliminate disparities in healthcare in a very time efficient way. And honestly, in this term, like I think the growing role for big players like Amazon, Google Health, or IBM Watson to integrate AI into clinical practice and clinical trials is very important, building on their very well established AI web services experiences. Also, from a radiation oncology perspective, I see it's very promising the translational applications of AI. including auto-segmentation, auto-radiation planning, synthetic CT from MRIs with the advance in MR Linux, also all the way to phenotypic risk stratification, radiogenomics, and outcome prediction. So I guess the future of AI and its applications in clinic does seem very bright.
Totally. I couldn't agree more with both of you, and I don't really have much to add there other than to say that I think the next decade is looking pretty exciting. So with that, that's really the end of the time that we have, but I want to thank you, Chuck and Hisham, for joining me as guest hosts, guest moderators, and guest interviewers here on the Radiology AI podcast.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for tuning in to the Radiology AI podcast. We'll be back next month. Be on the lookout for episodes like this and other content coming down the pipeline. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please also follow us on Twitter at radiology_AI. And if you have a topic or person you'd like us to cover on the podcast, email us at podcasts@rsna.org.